Good morning and welcome to IPC Apex 2020. It's going to be a very busy week here and a really interesting one with lots of different things happening in the industry, a lot of smart factory innovations here this week, and a lot happening in the wider business with the supply chain and of course the impact of the coronavirus. My first guest this morning is from the IPC. He's in charge of government relations. It's Chris Mitchell.
Nice. Great to be here.
Good. So Chris, you deal with government relations in Europe and China, all over the world. We've had a year of fairly disruptive trade negotiations with China-US trade negotiations. What's your view on the outcome of the first round?
So we have a phase one deal. That's good news.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's an indication that we'll get a phase two deal. We're not going to see a phase two deal this year. Mm-hmm. We'll likely have to wait until after the election, but at the very least it puts a pause on this escalating trade war. And it's a trade war that has really harmed the electronics industry and the U.S. Industry in particular. Mm-hmm. We did a survey just late last year. 86% of our members reported that this was a huge concern for them, and as a result of the tariffs, they were either experiencing lower margins, having to increase prices, seeing lower sales,
right.
And so this has been a huge disruption to them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Part of the problem
is it's been a necessary process because I mean we had an issue there with IP and various other things happening over in China. So the process, I think I don't think anyone would disagree that it was necessary.
We certainly see that there are these long-standing issues between the United States and China that need to be addressed. I think one of the concerns that we have had is that tariffs are an incredibly blunt instrument, mm-hmm. and oftentimes, especially by necessity, they're wielded by governments, and governments don't always understand the industry.
Right.
And if you look at the tariffs that went into place, especially these initial rounds of tariffs, what did they hit disproportionately? The supply chain, right? And the supply chain tends to have lower profit margins and are less able to weather these kinds of incremental cost increases. So that was a huge concern for us. Yeah. So I take your point. On the other hand, the way it impacted the electronics industry has had a deleterious effect here in the United States. Right. And so we'd like to see, as the United States government continues to engage in these negotiations, they take an approach that recognizes the importance of maintaining kind of a resilient electronics manufacturing industry in the United States. And
right, so what you're really saying is that the tariffs are a very blunt instrument and that they are very disruptive.
Our CEO says, likes to say it's like using a sledgehammer to make orange juice, right? It's effective but messy. Right. And I think that's what we've seen here is mm-hmm. that it's proven to be pretty messy, and I hear regularly from companies that are indicating that this is forcing them to move work that is done in the United States to other countries. Right. And so that's a concern for us.
Right. Okay. Looking across the pond right now, we've just had the Brexit issue has been resolved, or sort of resolved, and negotiations have opened up with the European Union. What sort of challenges are you facing there?
Well, it is an interesting environment, interesting times. We have a new commission. Mm-hmm. With an incredibly ambitious agenda around environmental issues and around industrial policy. And quite frankly, when it comes to industrial policy, there is a very concerted effort to integrate their environmental goals into their industrial policy goals, which is a really interesting dynamic and mm-hmm. one that the industry needs to get its arms around and figure out how we advocate for the industry and in partnership with government to the greatest degree possible. Because I think as an industry we have every interest in trying to address these same environmental goals. Right. But again, it's an interesting dynamic. We have over the last year, really over the last few years, we have increased our engagement in Europe. We now have a senior director in Europe, Alison James, who represents us before the European Commission and European Parliament and European institutions. In addition, we have a government relations committee made up of some of Europe's leading companies, which is exciting. And in addition, we are undertaking the kind of research that helps us better understand what's happening in Europe so that we can be a better advocate on behalf of the industry.
Okay.
So as for example, we're working with a research firm right now that has done work actually for the European Commission, trying to quantify and understand the reach of the electronics industry in Europe. And we're working with them now to identify what are the things that we can do to bolster the industry and make it more resilient in Europe. And so that's some research we're going to have coming out here in the first quarter of this year. In addition,
is that the research, the additional research group that you said that you set up within IPC?
We have.
Or is that another technical research area?
So historically, IPC has always engaged in market research. We're going to continue to engage in market research.
Right.
But at the same time, we're broadening our research program.
Okay.
And so we're going to have 4 focus areas. Number 1, economic and market analysis. Number 2, technology. Number 3, workforce and education, and number 4, environmental health and safety issues. And so those are our 4 focus areas, and we have individuals within the organization that are helping, technical experts that are helping us ensure that we are undertaking the right kind of research on behalf of the industry. But again, we're gonna not only invest in those four focus areas. At the same time, we're also finding platforms. We're going to be launching what's called the Thought Leadership Program, where we're bringing in outside voices, people within the industry or even outside the industry, and providing them a platform to share their insights with members and external stakeholders.
Right. So this is just really an effort to keep up with the technology and advise your members. I mean, because traditionally a trade association is in a supportive role to its members rather than a sort of technology leading role, so to speak.
So I think part of it is that we're seeing so much change taking place right now. I mean, change in terms of the technology, change in terms of the geopolitical environment. And so given all of this change that's taking place, we feel like we need to be more proactive in terms of understanding the issues, identifying the issues, and coming up with, in partnership with our members, kind of solutions and objectives, broader strategic goals for the industry.
Right. It's a huge topic, Chris, and it's one that we could probably spend a lot more time talking about, but it's great to get an overview to see exactly some of the new things that are happening here at IPC. So thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing some of these things come to fruition over the next 12 months.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, great. Super. So coming up after the break, we're going to be talking to one of the a women-led contract manufacturing company from the Valley. And welcome back. I'm delighted to be joined by my next guest, who is the president of a woman-owned contract manufacturing company in the Valley. It's Najat Bidriyeh. Nice to join us today, Najat. And of course, your company is Naprotek.
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about Naprotek, because you do, as I understand it, a lot of high reliability electronics. Give me a little bit more information about the company.
About the service we provide.
Yeah.
We're a contract manufacturing company, and we support electronic industry. The segment we cover is military, medical, industrial, networking, R&D. We do everything, but our major one is the top 3, is the military, medical, and industrial.
Right. So you're ITAR registered?
We're ITAR registered, and we are ISO 13485 and AS 9100, and we do support space also. Our employees are certified for space.
Really? Okay.
They are.
Interesting. Great. So what changes have you been making in the factory recently? Because I believe you've been doing some overhauling of the equipment.
Correct. So 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 2013, I decided to start changing our equipment. So I started one line at the time. We have a 3 line right now. Our equipment are Samsung Hanawa. One of them is 2 equipment to pick and place machine in parallel. We handle up to 20 by 24 PC board build. We have many new equipment in the last few years. We changed our X-ray to Dage.
So you're using basically all
2D,
high-end...
2.5D, correct.
Right.
We have inline washer. We have selective wave recently. We have stencil cleaner. All our screen printer has changed. New ovens. So basically almost.
Wow,
yeah.
almost a complete overhaul of the factory.
Last year, the 2018-2019, we have 8 pieces of equipment.
Wow, that's incredible. So where would you say, if somebody was to try and look for your unique selling proposition, what would you say is the real strengths of Naprotek?
Our strengths, our employee, the diversity we have, the quality of the service, the certification of our employee. We have a long tenure working with us. We have a lot of employees been with us for the last 23, 24 years.
Yeah. And you invest a lot in training. We
invest a lot in training and certification. Basically, IPC standard is changing. AS 9100, 13485 has been changing almost every 3 years.
Right.
So we spend a lot of time just training our employee. The IPC standard, you have to train, especially for the military and for the medical. We send our employee and they do 1 week, full week of training at the IPC facility. So becoming very expensive. I wish they don't have to do that to us. So our management spent their time just keeping up with the standard and with the changes.
It's a changing industry.
It is.
And it's expanding by application. There's so many new products coming onto the market, but also the technology. The technology is changing, and the batch sizes are changing. It's becoming a lot more high mix. I mean, how are you dealing with these challenges?
Well, we're at the Epic show, so basically the biggest change is the equipment. They are coming up right now with equipment that can handle smaller packages, smaller component for higher density and more complex PC board. So you have no other option. We cannot sit and build board by hand. We have to go with automation, definitely.
Yeah. So you have to bring in more automation because the miniaturization is making it going beyond the human scale.
And the challenge right now, the design. Customers coming up with very complex design, and they're in certain cases very close to violate even the rules, and they're pushing it to the edge, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I wish I could say it's going to get easier, but
no, it's not.
Not.
And this is what the message we're getting from our customers: getting harder and more difficult and more challenging.
Yep.
So we'll continue working close with them and keeping up with their technological changes, evolution, and keeping up with the training of our employee and team.
Good. Well, it sounds like you're doing all the right things, Najat, and congratulations, and thank you for coming in and telling us a bit about Naprotek today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Okay, coming up after the break, we're going to be talking to one of the leading software companies in the business, Siemens. And welcome back. I'm joined now by David Rogers, who's the Director of Electronics and Semiconductors for Siemens. Nice to see you, David. Thank you for joining us.
Good to see you too.
Okay. So Tell me, where do you think Siemens actually sits in the electronics atmosphere or environment? Where does it actually fit?
So usually people in the electronics market, when they are thinking of Siemens, they are thinking of Mentor and Vela and their tailored solutions about electronics. But where actually I'm coming from is factory automation. And factory automation, this is focused about machine controls, about switches, routers, about solutions, how to equip a machine. And since these solutions are actually focused around electronics, they are also consisting a lot of PCBs. And this is where we have factories, for example, one of our highlight factory is Amberg, where we are manufacturing more than 30 million pieces of products every year with more than 15 PCB lines. So we actually know PCB manufacturing pretty well.
Yeah, Amberg, I think, was actually one of the first factories to really embrace this smart factory changeovers. I mean, I went there a number of years ago, and they were making 8 times the amount of product that they were making 8 years previously, but the same number of employees. They didn't lose one employee.
Exactly. And when you say 8, now we are over the course of 30 years, we are at a productivity of 14 times, 14-fold, which means starting 1991, we're heading like 1 million, now we're having 40 million products. But more impressive is that we're still having the same amount of people in our factory working, which is around 1,100. Of course, blue collar is changing to white collar, but it's a consistent amount of people, and also it's a consistent amount of footprint in the factory. So it's the same floor space. And digitalization and digitalization and smart manufacturing, these are the levers which actually helps us to achieve this lighthouse of electrical or digital factory.
Right. I would hate to ask how many data points a day you're measuring. It used to be 50 million, and that was when I went there many years ago. Okay, what challenges do you see coming up in the industry that Siemens can really directly interact with?
So the challenges we see, for example, is one of them is time to market, new product introduction. Even in the industrial space, it's getting less and less life cycle times from 20 years. Now we're talking about 5 years. Technology is driving this, so the emergence of artificial intelligence and neural networks, and also, for example, machine learning are bringing products faster and faster to market, so we need to adapt this. Another is also to look into high mix, low volume versus low mix, high volume, when actually it makes sense to look into automate a factory or automate a certain product line. Also traceability, it's getting a big topic, as well as precision versus yield. You don't want to compromise on precision, and you don't want to compromise on yield. And we truly believe that artificial intelligence is one of the levers which can help us actually to tackle these challenges in electronics manufacturing.
Okay, so what specifically do you think that AI can bring to the manufacturing floor? So
artificial intelligence is a lever which helps us to build systems which learn by themselves, make decisions by themselves, and these kind of decisions are autonomous, and it decreases the amount of programming. So instead, when you're looking into an item, you want to recognize an item, you usually need to have it in a certain position, but once you're using artificial intelligence, this is not necessary. You teach the certain solution, pictures of the item, and the neural network is growing and growing, and in the end you actually have the opportunity to understand, okay, what is the position, what is the height, and it can distinguish different items from the item it needs to pick up.
Right.
Same
But are you talking about the system doing the measurements itself, rather than referring to just taking it from a library?
Exactly. So there are no libraries included. It's a network. You need to have a quality data set of pictures or of sounds, and this you feed into the network. You label it as good data or bad data, or this is a certain item. You apply or you deploy the neural network, and then the robot or whatsoever the system is, it actually does the work by itself.
Right. I think it's quite important because, in the electronics component world, for example, you can have components of the same value, but if they're from a different supplier, the sizes can be slightly different, and that can have an impact on production.
Absolutely,
yeah.
this is a good solution. Or, for example, also quality control, quality inspection, where a certain person needs still to look into the solution. Okay, there's a scratch, or I need to put my label on a certain position. But instead, you deploy AI, which always knows I need to put it here, or this is because I learned, or the neural network learned that this is a bad part. It actually can audit out and take only the good parts.
Right. Right, excellent. So I believe you've got a demo that you're doing over in your booth at this show, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, exactly. So in this demo we have a very high-level demo, which is a grasping robot, and this grasping robot, actually we taught different items, like toys, for example, a hammer, or for example a small terminal block, and once you select the terminal block, based on the range, it automatically recognizes where the item is and how many items are there, and then it actually puts it grabs it, and it puts away from them. It also has the capability to actually recognize unidentified objects. So once you say, please put the unidentified objects, it will say, okay, these 3 items I already know, but this is the 4th one which I don't know, so I put it and I audit out. This is a very high-level idea, which I talk to many customers and they really have fancy ideas what you can actually do. So I think artificial intelligence, whatever the human eye can understand, what the human eye can identify, artificial intelligence, AI, and networks can help us to actually replace this kind of work.
Well, we're really looking forward to seeing the demo, but next month on March 4th and 5th, of course, we've got the eSmart Factory conference, where you're going to be not only presenting, but we're going to be getting a tour of the Siemens DEX labs up there. So we'll see all the toys that you've got to play with when we get to San Jose next month. Yeah, great. So David, I want to thank you very much for coming in this morning, and wish you every success with your demos at the show here today.
Trevor, thank you very much. It's always good to be here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. So finally, just coming up after the break, we're going to have a quick catch up with our roving reporter, Mr. Keith Bryant.
At Kaizen, we know it's the science that makes the difference. The right solutions happen when you care enough to ask the right questions. And we understand that your performance is directly related to ours. Science knows why it works, care knows why it's important.
Okay, welcome back. Delighted to be joined by our old friend and roving reporter, Keith Bryant. Nice to see you, Keith.
Nice to be here, Trevor.
All right. Well, it's going to be a great show this week, of course, with all the smart factory things that are happening here, but there's also been a little bit of a downside to it with some of the things coming out of Asia. We've got with this coronavirus. Initially, there was a lot of Chinese companies scheduled to be exhibiting here this week, and they've had to cancel because of the virus. But the implications for this virus are spreading like wildfire. We've got a panel discussion lined up on Wednesday to discuss this in more depth with some experts, but give us a taste, give us a flavour of what's actually going on over there.
What's actually going on? Well, apart from the medical stuff and the fact that people have proved you can build a hospital for 1,000 people in 10 days, a lot of the factories in mainland China remain closed and are remaining closed for what we believe is foreseeable future. Yeah. One or two of the Japanese companies have said they're going to look at reopening next week, but that's only a look at. And obviously, because it happened through the Chinese New Year, a lot of people traveled back to China from other places where there are Chinese manufacturers. So it's affecting companies that manufacture in Thailand and other parts of Asia as well, right, because their middle managers and senior managers are grounded. We've heard one or two large global multinational companies who are putting a global travel ban out there. Yep. Because they're worried about their employees catching it and cross-infection and everything else.
Well, most airlines have already cancelled flights to mainland China. Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, but these are literally not bans to China. These are global travel bans on their people.
Right.
So if you're in the US and you want to go to Europe, then you don't fly.
Right.
You don't get there anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is obviously going to have a longer term effect. And we don't know really where it's going to affect the supply chain with the smaller companies that have closed.
Well, one of the things I heard is that some of the bigger companies that have closed around Wuhan are involved in the semiconductor packaging side. So we're going to very quickly start to see shortages coming through on semiconductor packaging.
Yeah, we're going to see shortages there. We're going to see shortages on metal components that are built into assemblies that go into final use products, into moldings, into castings, into everything, because basically that large area is closed.
Yeah.
And not only that, now they're talking about closing stuff in other areas as well. So it's really going to have a knock-on effect. And we're still in the early days of this virus.
Yep. Yeah, it's a frightening business. Anyway, we're going to be talking about that and much more on a panel discussion on Wednesday, so look out for that, and we'll catch up then.
Yep, look forward to it.